What's up, guys? Radio Geek here. In case you didn't already know, GOG is re-releasing the PC ports of the original Resident Evil trilogy, updated to work on modern hardware. I recently did a video on the first game, which I'll link to down in the doobly-doo, and the second game is out now as well. And no word on when the third game is going to be out yet as of the recording of this video, but I'm sure it'll be soon-ish. But for now, let's take a look at Resident Evil 2. Much like the director's cut of the first game, this game comes with an easy mode as well as an arranged mode, which is sort of like a randomizer where every item's in a different place than it normally is. Full disclosure, I've never played the arranged mode in any Resident Evil game. For this video, I'm focusing entirely on the main game, and I'll dive into another mode we'll talk about later. You might already know where that's going. Anyway, the game starts with a brief recap of the major events of the first game before jumping into a CGI intro. There's no live-action cinematics this time, but I feel like that would have inflated the game's budget by an insane amount. During the intro, we're introduced to the game's two protagonists, one of which you've already chosen by now because it makes you pick when you first start the game. Both characters have 8 item slots and both start with a knife and pistol, so pick whichever one you want. Leon S. Kennedy is a rookie cop traveling to Raccoon City for his first day on the job, and Claire Redfield is Chris's sister from the first game, and she travels to Raccoon City to look for Chris. They both find themselves in a zombie-infested city, and they figure the police station would be a safe place to hide out. But of course, since this is a video game and the story needs to happen, the police station is very much not safe. This is where you're going to be spending the bulk of your time, at least for the first half of the game or so. But you do spend a little time in the city proper at the very beginning as you make your way to the station, and I really like that because it gives you a sense that the world is bigger than the building you're in for most of the game, and it gives you a glimpse of the devastation of the city at large. Gameplay is pretty much identical to the first game. You start with a few rooms open to you, and as you explore and solve more puzzles, you'll find keys and key items which unlock more areas to explore and new pathways which make traversing through the police station easier and faster. Then you'll solve more puzzles, which give you more keys, and so on. You'll find yourself backtracking to places you've already been much more than you did in the first game, but as you open up new pathways, this becomes way less tedious. There are some places where, unless you had the foresight to take a specific item with you, you'll have to go all the way back to an item box to grab it, and then come all the way back to use it, and that can get kind of annoying. Item boxes are still here, and they work in exactly the same way, but inventory management is made slightly easier with both characters having 8 item slots with a chance for an expansion to 10 slots. More on that later. Each character also has an always equipped item that they can use at certain spots throughout the game and doesn't take up an item slot. Leon has a lighter and Claire has a lockpick. The game still uses tank controls, which basically means you're using first-person controls in a third-person game. But they're a little more refined here with some smoother animations, so I feel like they're a bit easier to get used to. There are a few button differences if you're coming straight off of the first game, but you can also remap your buttons if you want to, so it's not too big of an issue. Each character has an ally they'll meet up with at certain points in the game, which is different depending on your chosen character, and a couple points where you'll have to control that ally to solve a puzzle to gain a key and potentially some other useful items. There's also a section or two for each character where they have to help their ally, one of which leads to this iconic scene where you blow up a giant sewer gator. I love it. They're small sections and can be done pretty quickly, but I still like that this is here. This is another thing that makes the world feel bigger than just the building you're stuck in and the two main characters. Much like in the first game, you can find plenty of notes that not only reveal bits of plot information, but can also give you hints and clues for how to proceed, or where you can find much needed ammo or health items. Healing works exactly as it does in the first game. Your health goes through 3 stages, fine, caution, and danger, which is green, yellow, and red respectively. This time, though, you'll have a visual indicator that lets you know just how far down the scale you are without having to look at your health in the inventory screen. When you're fine, you'll walk or run around like normal. When you're in caution, you'll clutch your side and move slightly slower. And when you're in danger, you'll limp along, moving real slow. This is a nice touch. You'll always have an idea of where your health is at any given moment, which helps you make informed choices. Speaking of choices, some of your choices will actually have consequences in this game. It doesn't happen often, but it is there. For instance, there are 2 hallways where the windows are broken open and the button that controls the shutters isn't working because the cord has been cut. You can find 1 cord in the game, but you'll have to decide which hallway to use the shutters in. Whichever hallway you leave open will become infested with zombies later. There's also a locker with a submachine gun and a bag that gives you 2 extra item slots. You can take one or both of these, but what you take here will be unavailable during the game's second scenario. More on that later, but it's important to note that the game makes no mention of any of this, so if you aren't careful, you can really screw yourself over. One more thing about choices, like I said before, both Leon and Claire start with 8 item slots, a knife and a pistol, unlike in the first game where Chris starts with a knife and only 6 item slots. But they do have one big difference, and that's in the weapons they get. Leon can find a shotgun, a magnum, and a flamethrower, while Claire can find a grenade launcher, which is a fantastic weapon, and much like the first game, has 3 different types of grenades. A bowgun, which is weaker than the shotgun and uses more ammo. And the spark shot, which is really only useful for stunning a zombie so you can run past it. It kind of sucks. Leon can upgrade the pistol, shotgun, and magnum with weapon parts that you can find in semi-secret places throughout the game, which makes them significantly more effective. Claire just kind of has to make do with the weapons she gets. They aren't bad weapons, but Leon's, especially once upgraded, are just more effective. Ammo conservation is a bit more important in this game as opposed to the first game, particularly because whereas in the first game there was really only 1 boss fight, okay, technically 2, but it was the same boss and the fights were like 5 minutes apart. You'll fight the game's boss a few different times throughout the game, each time in a new, more dangerous form than before, and you need ammo for these fights. You can't just run by like you can with most other creatures in the game. There is much more room throughout the police station and other areas to just run right by zombies and other things, but sometimes there are much more zombies in one place at one time than there ever were in the first game. Just go by the same rule of thumb as in the first game. If you can safely run by a zombie or other creature without getting yourself killed, you probably should. Even still, the game throws enough things at you that you very probably will run out of ammo at some point or another, and you're just going to have to run for your life at that point. When you finish the game, you'll be rated based on your total number of saves and how long it took you to get through the game. You can get extra weapons for subsequent playthroughs by getting certain ratings under certain times. But no matter what your time or rank is, you'll get to start with what's called the second scenario. This is sort of kind of a new game plus mode with the character you didn't pick the first time, and you run through the game's events through their point of view. I say this is kind of a new game plus mode, but it's almost like its own game entirely. The layout of the police station is the same, but how you get to the police station, locations of all the key items, and a few other things are entirely different, but some puzzles do remain the same. The biggest addition to the second scenario, and even if you've never played Resident Evil 2 at all before, you'll probably know, is Mr. X. This big tyrant variant that's dropped into the city to wipe out any survivors, and that means you. Mr. X will show up at some pretty inconvenient points throughout the game, and you can either stay to try to knock him down or run away. It's always best to run away. Even if you can manage to knock him down, he just gets back up again and come at you later. All you're accomplishing at this point is just a waste of a lot of ammo. When and where he shows up is scripted, so while that might give you some good jump scares your first time through, in subsequent playthroughs it becomes pretty predictable. And I know I said it's always best to run away, but he's also the second scenario's final boss. So, yeah. Fight him then. Once you finish both scenarios, from the main menu, go into the extras, and you can pick the 4th survivor mode. This is a timed minigame where you play as one of Umbrella's Special Forces agents as they attempt to get the G-Virus sample back from the lab, back through the police station to their evac point at the helipad where the helicopter was on fire earlier. This character, known as Hunk, became something of a fan favorite character, but I gotta say, I don't understand why. He effectively only has a few minutes of screen time and has never been talked about or expanded on since, at least not to my knowledge. He's a nothing character. I don't get the fascination. But the game mode is a nice challenge. There's also a variation of this where you play as a giant piece of tofu that only has a knife. I love it. It's amazing. That is all. Of course, as we all know, this game was remade in 2019 as a more in a more modern style with an over-the-shoulder camera and a great many changes to the layout and overall gameplay. I may or may not do a video on that at some point, but for now, let's wrap this up. Resident Evil 2 was my very first experience with the Resident Evil series, particularly the N64 port, which I still have a hard copy of. Being the first one I ever played, it sort of has a special place in my heart. I still think it's great today, even if the controls do feel outdated and the graphics aren't mind-blowing. That said, they are significantly better than the first one, with smoother animations and a wider variety of zombie models and more detailed backgrounds. Come to think of it, there isn't much that RE2 doesn't do better than RE1 in my opinion. Actually, that's not true. I have two gripes with this game that I also had with the first game, but I think I forgot to talk about those in that video. One, the audio mixing. It's kind of shit. It makes it hard to hear a character speak during dialogue. So
Ada Wong. Ada Wong. I've heard that name before. Now I remember.
But at least in this one, you can turn down the music and the settings to help with that a little bit. The second thing I don't like, specific to the PC ports, there's no way to exit to desktop, and the only way to exit to the main menus is to get killed. To exit the game entirely, you have to Control-Alt-Delete and add in task. It's very annoying. Aside from that, the voice acting, while not brilliant, is vastly improved, although some lines are still very cheesy.
I know I'm not capable of caring about anyone.
The characters are given more depth, the bosses are cooler, the weapons can get way more fun to use. RE2 is just a vast overall improvement. And with GOG re-releasing the original trilogy on PC, there's no reason to not jump into it if you're a Resident Evil fan at all, whether it's your first time playing or your 100th. Anyway, let me know what you thought about Resident Evil 2 down in the comments. Thumbs up if you liked this video, thumbs down if you didn't. Either way, you're feeding the algorithm, so I appreciate it. Click on one of these things. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.